Hello, beautiful children. It's Mrs. Day. Hi. Okay, listen. The poetry form that I want to teach you about today, it's not that it's difficult. It's not that it's difficult. It's not. It's that the poetry form that I want to teach you about today has more rules than some of the forms that you've learned about before. Like the haiku that you learned about that has 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. That makes a haiku. That's easy. This one has more rules. This one has more rules than that. But I'm going to teach them to you. They are finite, like there are only so many rules. And if they follow these rules, then it's a villanelle. We're learning about villanelles today, kids. Villanelle. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. Watch this. All right. A villanelle is a poem with a specific structure. Every villanelle has 5 tercets, which are 3-line stanzas. So stanzas with 3 lines in them. It's called a tercet. And then 1 quatrain, which is a 4-line stanza. So 3-line stanzas, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a 4-line stanza at the end. A villanelle also has 2 repeating rhymes, so only 2 sounds that are repeated throughout the poem, like repeatedly rhymed, and 2 refrains. Those are lines that are repeated throughout the poem. The refrains are always the first and third lines of the first stanza, and the first refrains are alternated as the last lines of the other stanzas, and they are also the last 2 lines of the poem. Get all that? Ready? All right, let's go take a test. Just kidding. I would love to give you an example. I take as my text today this poem. It's called Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night. It's by Dylan Thomas. And I picked this poem because, frankly, English teachers love this poem. Man, we love it. You're going to see this poem again. It's also a perfect example of a villanelle. Let me show you. So a villanelle, the first thing I said was that it has 5 tercets or 3-line stanzas. Look, 1, 2, 3 lines, 1, 2, 3 lines, 1, 2, 3 lines, 1, 2, 3 lines, 5 times. So 5 tercets, and then a quatrain. The last stanza has 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. So all the rest of them have 3. The last one has 4, 5 tercets, and then a quatrain. The first thing that a poem has to have to be a villanelle are 5 tercets and 1 quatrain. 5 tercets and 1 quatrain. All right, that's thing number 1. Thing number 2 that a villanelle has to have are 2 repeating rhymes. So I don't know if you had the opportunity to read this poem yet, but if you did, you would probably notice that there are 2 sounds repeated throughout the poem. We've got this ite sound, so bright, flight, sight, height, night, light. And we've got an a sound. We've got day, bay, way, gay, pray. Thing number 2 that a villanelle needs are 2 repeating sounds. We got that. Finally, look at us. We're already at finally. Finally, a villanelle needs 2 refrains or lines that are repeated throughout the poem. So we have this line, do not go gentle into that good night, that is repeated throughout the poem. It's in the first stanza, and then it alternates as the last lines of the other stanzas, and then it's in the last 2. And then we've got this one, rage, rage against the dying of the light, that alternates as being the ending of, so it goes, do not go gentle, rage, rage, do not go gentle, rage, rage. And then those 2 are the last 2 lines. The other thing about the refrains, remember refrains, just repeated lines. The other thing about the refrains is that line 1 of the poem is refrain 1. And line 3 of the poem is refrain 2. So the first line of the poem is refrain 1, and the third line of the poem is refrain 2, and then they get repeated down here. That's it. Oh my God, you made it sound like this was going to be hard. I know, right? Totally easy. Villanelles. It's like nothing. To review, a villanelle is a form that poetry can have. Just like a haiku is a form, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, a villanelle is a form that poetry can have. A villanelle has to have 5 tercets and then a quatrain, like this one has 5 3-line stanzas and then a 4-line stanza. A villanelle has to have 2 repeating rhymes, like this one has night, light, right, night, sight, bright, flight, and day, they, bay, way is 2 rhyming sounds that are repeated. And finally, a villanelle has to have 2 refrains that are repeated throughout the poem. Here it is. The refrain, "Do not go gentle into that good night," is repeated throughout the poem. "Rage, rage against the dying of the light" is repeated throughout the poem. And the first line of the poem is the first refrain. The third line of the poem is the second refrain. That's so easy, right? Villanelles. Who knew? So easy. If we are in class together, then our next step is to identify a couple of other villanelles, and then for you to use this form and write your own. Oh man, I'm so excited. Let's get started.